Hello and welcome to Eco Girl in a Modern World. My name is Shelley and my channel is dedicated to talking about topics on how to be environmentally friendly in a modern world. Today I'm going to keep the video very brief and I'm going to talk about a very big news story that has been on the internet. We're going to talk about the new United Nations High Seas Treaty Act. What this act is it is a global initiative to protect 30% of the marine wildlife and the oceans that are publicly used amongst all countries. Basically the areas of the entire ocean that are used that are not under any one country's jurisdiction. So it's a huge deal. It's a long time coming, and we're just going to talk about that today because it's really exciting. And now the last global initiative, and I've really been comparing these two, is this new High Seas Treaty is really like the Montreal Protocol that came out in the 80s. The Montreal Protocol was also a United Nations initiative to stop CFCs, to stop chlorofluorocarbons from going into the atmosphere. And what that is it's protecting the ozone of the planet. So the Montreal Protocol came about really from after, the 50s and 60s and 70s, after, 2 world wars and a lot of booming economy, booming merchandise. A lot of travel occurred then. When you think of the 60s, you think of Pan Am and a lot of flight and stuff like that. So when we produce things and we put a lot of, when we put a lot of gases into the air that deplete our ozone, it has a detrimental effect. And especially with the way that we drive cars and things like that. Of course, we've been looking for, hundreds of years now how to manage our carbon emissions, but it came to a head at the end of the 60s and 70s. We were looking at the ozone and seeing that we were putting a big hole. It looked like a gigantic circle over the planet that was opening up our atmosphere, which would kill us very quickly. It was a big deal because doing that to our planet in such a rapid pace is detrimental. But and actually what started this channel for me, my YouTube channel, is 2 years ago I participated in an environmental a series of environmental classes at my local community college, and I did get a chance to visit NASA. And during my visit, we looked at this. We looked at the satellite images from the 60s, 70s up until the Montreal Pact and beyond. But it was very exciting to watch, because with the way that we used gas and the way that we used specifically a lot of aerosol. And we used to joke about this in the 80s all the time, when you use Aquanet or, aerosol cans for spray deodorant, things that we really don't need to be using aerosol cans for, that emits chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, which contribute to the hole in the ozone. And I remember in the 80s we used to joke with the amount of hairspray, the big hairdos, we used to say you're putting a hole in the ozone, which we probably were. But all of the plane flight, in the 60s, all of the use of gas in the 70s, and of course the way that we use it today, and also a lot of air conditioning, Freon. The type of air conditioning Freon that you use in both your cars and in your air conditioning units were contributing to the problem. So as a planet, the United Nations got together, and in 1987, we signed the protocol that we would all reduce CFCs. We would eliminate them. We would not use them anymore. And in the last 30 years, the hole in the ozone has closed. And it is miraculous to see. When I went to NASA, it showed over the years and over the decades how we reversed it. We were looking at 40 years before we had before our planet would fry because we depleted our own ozone, and we reversed it. And you probably see it now. Actually, one of the scientists at that convention, I was in the room with a group of scientists, and one of them was an engineer who actually gave the name of the new Freon that we use in cars that is not a CFC, that is, goes to, it's the alternate that we use. And I mean, I've never heard anybody complaining about it being too hot in their air conditioners. So I think that we've done a good job. Of course, we can always get better. We can get, to a place where we drive a whole lot less, and that we don't, that we get even better with it. But with that global initiative, with us coming together as all nations for one planet, we reversed that very detrimental problem. Now, I am a little bit angry at the United States in the last couple of years and, a couple of terms. We have really, I don't think that we've completely left the Montreal Protocol, but we have bent the rules quite a bit. And to be honest, North America is the number one contributor. Like, we contribute like 85% of the entire planet's CFCs, and emissions, but yet we don't want to take responsibility for the way that we produce it, and we'll try to bend rules on a global pact. That's unacceptable. That I watch in the news very closely, and if we are trying to either leave that protocol or bend the rules of that protocol, we need to get our stuff together. And we need to come back and not only stay in our commitment, but double up on our commitment to be better and to reduce all of that, and to not be wasteful, because we're spending the vitality of the entire world, not just ourselves. But I'm always proud to see those images, and you can go to NASA's website and look at it. It's a miraculous thing. So when I see in the news when the UN came out with another global initiative, an entire planet initiative, I tear up a little bit. It's a beautiful thing. And actually the opening statement for the president was very moving. She was almost brought to tears, because this has been a long time coming, guys. So much work with all nations have come into this, because the 30%, just like when it comes to our oceans, that is another very big priority. Our skies, you don't sail in our skies. We fly in our skies, but the oceans are where we began. Oceans, the spawn of life came from our oceans. The other thing is that there's diverse wildlife in the base, in the bottom of these central zones that aren't owned by any one country. They're the middle areas, and that's the 30% that we're striving to protect. Almost like a national park, these are areas that don't belong to anyone, but we need to preserve. The other thing about oceans is just like air currents are very important. In the last 2 weeks, if you've been experiencing some strange weather, and I can attest, one day it is 40 degrees, and it's March, April where I'm at. This is still spring. It shouldn't be 80-degree weather, 60 maybe. But we've had 40-degree days, we had 60-degree days, we had 3 80-degree days. And what that's global warming, and that's hot air meeting cold air and sending tornadoes through the Midwest, which you've also probably seen in the news. To get away from the gloom and doom, the same thing happens with oceans. And if you ever talk to any environmentalists, and we'll really stress this too, it's not just protecting the wildlife in those central oceans. We have to protect the temperature. Just like flying too much or driving too much causes warm air to hit cold air to get, hurricanes and typhoons and, all sorts of adverse, abnormal weather, the tides do it too. Warm water meets cold water, that melts ice caps, that affects, it affects marine wildlife, and it most definitely affects our weather. And it contributes to, it's like a spider web. You pull on one string and everything else can collapse. So we have to be careful with it. But I was absolutely moved and super excited to see that this is actually on the table, guys. This is years and probably decades worth of work for all countries to sign a similar pact. It's the Montreal Protocol, but for for oceans. And what they're looking to do is they're looking to protect the 30% of oceans that don't belong to anyone, that are central neutral territory, that have diverse wildlife in it. The other thing is that we have a whole lot of trash. You think that we just throw trash into, if you watch this channel, you know how adverse I am to landfills. There are islands of trash. There are floating trash areas. Like there's literally an island, trash, out in the ocean from floating plastics, from just the currents circulating and pulling all the things that we just throw away into the ocean into large land masses. That's part of the problem. So, it's harder with oceans because we actually have to commit and be better about trash too, because we can't just promise that we'll protect this 30%, these select areas, but then just continue to use the ocean, because that's even harder to control. Landfills are a plot of land that you can designate. You throw your trash in the ocean, it's floating and moving wherever the currents go. And then we're affecting the currents with all of this, global warming and other things. But long story short, you have to Google it carefully. You might want to say UN High Seas Treaty. There is something called a High Seas Pact, and that's a much older rule. I think that's from the 1500s, that just talks about, I think it really relates to pirates. I think it talks about whether or not you can make somebody walk the plank, and I'm not kidding. So yes, you want to look up the UN High Seas Treaty. But I'll go ahead and post the video below. It was absolutely moving. The president, she was professional, but she was so emotional. She opened the meeting by saying the ship has reached the harbor. We've reached safe harbors. We finally got a treaty. We got something on paper that we can all commit to. And I compare Montreal Protocol to UN High Seas Treaty because we are doing the same thing. We're getting our stuff together. We're saying we are not going to allow this to happen anymore. We're not going to allow us to pollute these waters, to abuse these waters, we're going to do our due diligence. And to be honest, do any of us miss the aerosol cans with our hairspray? No. We need to get away from pumps too, but we can live differently. This is not a harboring effect. This is not the end of the world for us to protect our oceans and our marine wildlife. So I'm always hard on humans, but I'm super excited, and I just wanted to do just a brief video to tell you that if you see me posting this on all of my social media pages, it's because it's a huge deal and it's a good way. Please look it up in the news, read more about it, compare it to what we did in '87, and look at the pictures of the way that we closed the ozone. Imagine if we did the exact same thing. Imagine if 30 years from now, if we're looking back and saying that was the start of when we saved our oceans. So as we come up on Earth Day, and we're just a few weeks away, let's talk about this. Vote for it. Call your statesmen, call your congressmen, read up on the facts, see what the UN is doing, see what it entails, and really get behind it. Use your voice and see how you can contribute to making this a global thing. The other thing is monitor your own government. If you feel like we're bending the rules or trying to leave, agreements that have saved the planet thus far, don't let anybody do that. Don't let greed override the protection of our natural resources. So I just wanted to go ahead and do a quick video about that. I have a few links below that talk about the details of what it entails and how exciting it is. And I definitely hope that you get a chance, as we come into spring, that you get a chance to visit the ocean and see what it is that we're protecting, and really let it sit on the forefront of your mind, because some big positive changes are coming. And this is always the best thing about being an environmentalist, when these type of changes come about. But I thank you so much for joining me today. I will hope to see you in the next video. It's going to be the Earth Day one. And I'll catch you then. Bye.